Hi, I'm Karina. Today I'm going to be talking about surveying the Husky study experience. So, the overarching design question for this survey for me was how can we improve the interior space of UW libraries to promote an experience in which students' cell phones and social media platforms do not distract them from their studying? So, in my field research, I noticed that people in libraries appear to be distracted by their cell phones and social media. And when I followed up on these or with these questions in my interviews, I noticed that my participants felt that they were distracted by cell phones and social media, but also that they had very little self-control and wanted access to these platforms while they were studying, even if it kind of impeded and negatively impacted their studying experience, which I thought was a very kind of complex and interesting problem. So these are kind of my high level research questions that I wanted to tackle with this survey. So I really wanted to validate my findings from my field research and interviews and find out if students were actually distracted by their cell phones and social media while they were studying. I wanted to see if students were actually willing to give up access to their cell phones and social media while they were studying, because if they weren't willing to give up their access to these platforms, then this kind of really reduced my space for recommendations and creating a solution to this problem if they weren't willing to give up access at all. And if students were willing to give up access to their cell phones and social media, I wanted to figure out kind of which component of these platforms were the most distracting to students so I could hone in my focus and my solution on that and try to figure out how to alleviate distractions from that particular component of social media or cell phones specifically. So I had a couple pieces of criteria for in order to be included in my survey. Participants must be UW students. They must use libraries and on-campus study spaces regularly, and they must use a cell phone and or social media platforms regularly while they were studying. My participants came from various kind of grade levels or years of studying at the university, and they studied at various study spots around campus, including libraries and on campus cafes. So, my survey was completed by 34 participants. I sourced these participants using Facebook Messenger. The survey itself was administered on Google Forms. I had 12 questions. There were 6 multiple choice, 4 rating questions, 1 ranking questions, and 1 short response question. There were a couple limitations to this survey. First of all, it was only administered to people that I know, since I messaged them directly asking them to take it. So I guess the information in this survey might be kind of biased to the people who I spend my time with and who I see around campus. Another thing is that this survey was only taken by 34 participants, which is very small compared to the actual uh, student body of the university. So I'm not sure if that makes our results statistically significant, but I think that it gives us a significant amount of data to work with. So in my field research and in my interviews, almost everyone admitted to having their social media platforms kind of open while they're studying and having their cell phones out. I saw in my field research that people had their cell phones like face up on the table next to them. So I really wanted to validate this finding using my survey. And as you can see, um, the majority of the people did agree that their cell phones and social medias were distracting to them while they were studying. Only one person disagreed with both of these statements. So I think that really validates my finding, and it proves that this is a problem. So if students were able to focus regardless of having their cell phones out and their social media accounts open, and ignore their distractors on these devices, then we wouldn't have a problem to solve. but I think that this finding really proves that there is a problem that needs to be solved here. So as cell phones and social media were what I perceived to be the most distracting, I wanted to see if participants viewed these platforms kind of differently. And I think that we can tell from this chart that they did. So participants perceived cell phones as more of a useful studying tool, and they were less willing to give up access to them while they're studying. But they were more willing to give up access to their social medias. Like more than half of the participants were willing to give up access to their social medias while they were studying, and they viewed it as a less useful studying tool. So this is important because it helps us narrow down our kind of design solution or our recommendations. Since cell phones are seen as useful to some participants, they probably won't want to give up their access to their cell phones completely while they're studying. But because social media is seen as a lot less useful to participants while they're studying, we can go to further lengths to completely eliminate access to people's social media accounts. So here I wanted to see if there was a certain aspect of either platform that participants ranked as an overall kind of most distracting component. So I sorted these kind of rankings of distractants by people's self-control or perceived self-control. So 1 is having the least amount of self-control, and 5 is having the most amount of self-control. And overall, I think that phone and video calls are consistently seen as major distractors, but overall, these results are pretty across the board. This means that there is not one aspect of these platforms that is universally distracting to everyone. And this is important because that means that in our design solutions, we need to accommodate different options for people, different ways for them to kind of figure out what's distracting to them personally and kind of tailor this experience towards them. So we need to come up with ways that to generally make people less distracted, not necessarily targeting and eliminating access to one specific type of platform like Snapchat or texting or Twitter or Instagram. So my first recommendation is to try to create some sort of shift in the culture at libraries. Because cell phones and social media are seen as distracting to the majority of students, then I think promoting a cell phone and social media free zone in the library might make people less distracted. If we could inform students of the impact it has in their studying and discourage them from using it, using kind of maybe comics or fun posters or flyers or videos, or just creating some sort of set of pieces that can engage people and kind of make them consciously think about their choices and how it impacts their studying, that might be useful in improving the study experience. So my second set of recommendations is kind of physically changing the library space. So because people were more willing to give up their access to social media and they felt that it was a less useful studying tool than their cell phones, I think that blocking access to social media on the UW Wi-Fi networks within library spaces would prevent people from accessing their social media accounts so much and maybe make them less distracted. And because participants thought that their cell phones could be a useful studying tool, or some of them did, I think that it's important to kind of give them a way to keep it out of sight, but also allow them to access it. So this could be done through multiple ways. One idea that I had was creating a cell phone compartment under the chair. So if students place their cell phones under the chair, it's out of sight, but they can still access their cell phone if they need to communicate with someone while they're studying or look up a piece of information that they can't do on their laptop or other devices. My third suggestion here is creating a room with background music in the library. Many participants claimed in their short answer question that non-lyrical music and music which they were not familiar with helped keep them focused. And I think that background music is a good way to keep people's mind off distractors universally, even if they cannot pinpoint exactly what the distractor is in social media or cell phones. So this will kind of universally keep people more in tune with their work and help them focus regardless of what's distracting them. So my next steps here would be to look into which music makes students the most focus. If I were to create some sort of room that needed to play music, it'd be helpful to figure out exactly what music I should be playing and to figure out how to kind of shift the library culture the most effectively, kind of see what students are more receptive to in regards to kind of funny videos or funny pictures or cartoons, or how to kind of get them, how to make not using cell phones and social media cool. So here's my reflection. I had a lot of fun with the survey. I really enjoyed being able to validate my results. That was really exciting to see that I was right about things that I learned in my interviews, my field research. I was surprised by how willing people were to participate in my survey. I really don't like participating in surveys usually, so I was excited that I had participants. And I was also surprised by it. I thought some questions would be really useful, but it actually ended up telling me nothing when I looked at the data from them. And next time I'll try posting my survey in a forum, not relying on only people that I know and directly messaging them. I think that directly messaging them is good because it really gets people engaged and makes people more willing to participate, but I also think that it may lead to biased results. Okay, thank you for listening.